There's several ways to play flexible, and today we're going over everything you need to know. Let's get started. This guide will be broken up into two main parts: item flexibility and unit flexibility. For ultimate flexibility, it's best to start by securing 1 to 2 tank items first. Tank stats are the king of the early game, and by doing so, you can keep your carry options open. Sunfire is the best starting item for this, as you get anti-heal and tank stats right away. But if you're considering a Morello comp, then Stone Plate is the next best option. For damage carries, we're breaking this up into further sections: attack speed carries, mages, and full crit carries. Generally, most AD carries fit into the attack speed category. The items to flex here are Ginsu's, QSS, and sometimes Giant Slayer. The items you pair with this will depend on what type of carry you play, but these items work great with both AP and AD carries. These items can be flexed on different groups. We have Dragon carries, Shapeshifter carries, Dragonmancer carries, Warrior carries, and Ranged carries. Ginsu's is the main flex here. QSS is not always best in slot for every carry here, but keeps your options open so it can be worth it to play. Giant Slayer is great on AD or AP, but it's most effective in the late game when tanks have more HP. This item gets more value when multiple units meet the HP threshold, and it also scales spells up so it can be very powerful. Here are the AD carries who work well with attack speed. Since Deathblade was gutted, it's best to go for Infinity Edge as your main power item. Keep in mind, some melee carries like Elise prefer Bloodthirster over Infinity Edge. From there, if your carry is in melee, then you probably want QSS. If it's ranged, then you can swap that for another power item like Giant Slayer, Last Whisper, or Runean's Hurricane. Keep in mind, Runean's Hurricane and Last Whisper are not as flexible, so if possible, those should be the last items slammed. Here are the AP attack speed carries. For AP carries, the best power item is Archangel Staff. It synergizes really well with Ginsu's, as they are both ramp-up scaling items that provide excellent raw stats. Other options which are good but not as strong are Death Cap for raw stats, Jeweled Gauntlet for crit, Gunblade or Hodge for healing output, Shiv for MR shred and solid damage output, and these should be the last items you build on your carry, as they are the least flexible. If the carry is in melee, then you probably want Bloodthirster over Archangel Staff for sustain, but if you supplement with augments, then Archangel Staff is great too. If you want to rank up fast, then you need to sub to my channel for more guides like this and meta updates to get you to the rank you want. Now we're moving on to spellcasters. Between Shojin and Blue Buff, Shojin is more flexible since most AP carries have larger mana bars. If you know you're going with a spellcaster, slamming Shojin ASAP is great because it's best in slot for pretty much any of them. Even carries that prefer Blue Buff still do well with Shojin. This, along with Archangel Staff, are the two best items for any spellcaster in any given situation. Archangel Staff provides so much value by ramping up and giving huge stat bonuses. It's impossible to ignore. If you have the item, it should be played. The third item can be up to preference at this point, but if possible, I like to use Morello Nomicon. Since the buffs in 12.14 made it so viable, it provides great utility as well. Other options for the third slot are Death Cap for stats, Giant Slayer against tanks, Jeweled Gauntlet for crit items, and Hodge or Gunblade for healing. If you can secure Shojin plus Archangel Staff early, you can ignore the third item slot until late game. Focus instead on securing tank items or extra utility like aura items. Now I feel Blue Buff is worth mentioning, even if it's not very flexible. This item works best on carries with small mana bars. The instant mana allows them to keep spamming spells and churning out damage. Units like Karma, Ezreal, Yasuo love this item. When combined with an augment like Blue Battery, the unit basically never auto-attacks because it's too busy using spells. Now let's dive into full crit builds. Full crit is one of the least flexible builds in the game for a couple reasons. Only a few carries get high value from it, and the items are very specific and don't allow for adjustments. With that being said, this build does dish out a ton of damage. For the most flexibility, you want to start with Infinity Edge. That way, if you can't find other components, you can pivot into an AD attack speed carry. Next, there's two options. Jeweled Gauntlet should be the next item build. However, if you get Jeweled Lotus, then you can make Archangel Staff instead, as it gives you more raw power to multiply for bigger crits, and your spells will be able to crit with Lotus alone. Your third item will depend on what carry you play. For instance, Lee Sin does not like Blue Buff. Instead, he wants a healing item like Hand of Justice or Bloodthirster. Now that we've covered items, it's time to move on to carry units. Here are some comps that have flexible carries with items to match. First is Mirage Cavalier or Warrior. If you saw my last meta update, you know how powerful these comps are. And one of the reasons is because you can flex between Yone Reroll and Deja Carry. Both units can flex Ginsu's and QSS, with the third item changing depending on which carry you play in the late game. And since these two items are so flexible, you can pivot in or out of this comp at any time. It's also possible to flex a Yone carry into an Olaf comp. Just swap out Mirage units for extra Scale Scorn and Bruiser units. And as a side note, if you can't find Ginsu's, both Olaf and Yone play well with Rapid Fire Cannon. It's not very flexible since you can only play it on a warrior comp and sometimes assassins, but it is worth mentioning. Dragonmancer is the most flexible comp in the game. It houses several carries with different builds. Swain and Volley are attack speed carries, and Ginsu's is the main flex here, but they both love QSS. The main difference is the third item. Although they can both flex Archangel Staff, Volley prefers Bloodthirster for healing. Karma and Lee Sin are full crit Dragonmancers. The only difference between them is Lee Sin wants Hodge or Bloodthirster, and Karma wants blue buff. If you start with crit items on Karma, and you don't high roll her, just move on to Lee Sin and you're good to go. Now we're talking about Mage Comp, which has several different carries in it. Nami's damage buffs in 12.14 make her a viable damage carry again. That leaves you with Nami, Rise, Zoe, and even Aesol can carry in mage comps even without being a mage. All of those carries I mentioned can flex Shojin and Archangel Staff. Your third item could be anything depending on what you might need. Jewel Gauntlet, Giant Slayer, Death Cap, Gunblade, or Hand of Justice. All of the same flexes for third item as AP attack speed carries. Lastly, we have Cannoneer, a highly flexible comp that can play through Tristana or Corki. It's easy to slot in one for the other. If you high roll Tristana, then great, but if not, then move your carry items to Corki and you're done. Both carries make great use of Ginsu's and Infinity Edge. The third item can vary, but Last Whisper or Giant Slayer works really well to shred tanks. What did you think? Let me know in the comments down below. Until next time, I'm Swagadelic, and I hope this helped.